Hey there, welcome back to my build of the LDO Voron 0.2 kit. This is day 2 of the build. If you're behind or you need to catch up, I'll put a link up in the corner to the playlist for the whole series so that you can see what we've done so far. It was fairly minimal yesterday. I'll give you a look at that now. This was where we ended up with our Z-axis yesterday, and just one little change that I made since the last video. I don't know if you noticed or not, but I was spending a lot of time with this particular linear rail kind of moving it up and down toward the end of that build, and the reason for that is I was concerned that it seemed like it had a little catch in it in one spot where it wasn't moving smoothly. And so what I actually ended up doing after that video was done is I took this linear rail off of the extrusion, I re-cleaned it and re-greased it, and now it's moving much better than it was. So that's the one change since last time. I just wanted to make sure the motion on these was really, really good because I don't want to run into trouble in the future. So today we're going to build the frame for the print bed that mounts onto these two Z carriages and then can move up and down. We are deviating from the standard Voron manual because the LDO kit came with this Kirigami bed modification. So instead of building the bed platform out of extrusions, we get this nice little metal part here that is the main base for what we're going to be putting together here. And just so that you know, because we won't have the manual to show you on screen with the Voron manual that we've been following along, this is the guide that I'm looking at today as I go through here. This is LDO's guide for building this Kirigami bed mod, and so it's decent. It has pretty good pictures as you go through here, and it's fairly simple and yeah, pretty easy to follow. So this is what's going to be up on my screen as we build today, and I'll walk you through the steps that we need to do here. So they asked us to double check this metal part here just to make sure that things are lined up, that like vertically these two pieces are aligned with one another, that there hasn't been any flexing or bending during shipment. I've already done that. It all looks really, really good. And then they go through all of these printed parts and ask you to put heat set inserts into all the appropriate spots. And I've done that as well. So we should now be ready to go just with the assembly of this thing. There were 6 printed parts that you had to print for this. They are these 6 right here. And this one is special. The original print of this I did in transparent filament. It's meant to be the little diffuser that goes in the front here for the light that's going to be on the front of the bed. I wasn't crazy about how that came out in my transparent filament that I had, and so I reprinted it in transparent resin. So this is the one part in this entire build that will have not been printed on a Voron printer, right? My big Voron printed all of these printed parts except for this one diffuser here, which was printed in transparent resin. So yeah, but all of the parts came out really good. They're all ready to go. So let's go ahead and move on with the instructions and go for whatever it wants us to do with the build here. And the first thing is to press this into place. So there is a NeoPixel LED that goes on the front of the bed here that we can then hook up through clipper to show status like you would normally have on a stealth burner on a big Voron printer. I'm not sure that this is going to press in place. I might have to do a little bit of trimming of the part to get it to fit well. No, it looks like it's going to be fine. I just need something to press it down with. All right. So with our LED diffuser seated nicely in place, they provide this little PCB that has the NeoPixel on it, and they want us to just put this in here behind the diffuser. And the connector on this side, according to the instructions, I'm not sure that it matters either way. I think it would fit both ways, but this will be fine. All right, tighten that down nice and snug so that it doesn't rattle around as the bed moves. And that looks pretty good. Next, and also they say in the instructions to press fit a couple of M3 hex nuts in the underside of this piece. I had already done that when I was working on the heat set inserts. I went ahead and put those in place. They recommend that you could put a drop of super glue to hold them in place, but for mine, they press fit perfectly in there anyway, and they're not going anywhere, so I didn't put any glue on those. All right, next we have the holder for this little connector PCB. And this slides into a little slot that's right here. And then kind of sits down flush against the angle on this part, and we can use one screw to hold it in place. So for me, getting that screw to thread in straight was a little difficult. Maybe just the way that my printer printed this little opening here, it wasn't maybe quite wide enough for that to slide in all the way, but that has worked out okay. And then we slide two of these Wago connectors with the opening this way so that we can attach some wires later on. So what this piece is going to be is it mounts onto the metal frame here, and we will connect the parts from down below from our electronics compartment for our bed heater and our bed thermistor. We'll connect those into here, and then we'll connect the actual bed into the other terminals here as well. So that way you can disconnect these easily and remove your print bed in the future if you ever need to for servicing. Final bit of prep, I think. Well, no, there's a couple more bits of prep before we start assembling this onto the frame. So this little nut block here slides down, I believe. Yeah, so there's a little gap there. So this slides down over the top here. And then we're going to use 4 screws just to lock that in place. And I guess this is the spot where if your metal bed frame here was a little bent, you would notice, right? Because things wouldn't line up right when you try to line this up or when you try to insert this bit here. All right, this looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten these down nice and snug. Yeah, that looks good. All right, next in the instructions, they asked us to remove one end from our cable chain that's going to run up from the electronics compartment up to the underside of the bed. And this was the end that they wanted us to remove. And so we're going to use, I think, this little mount here to attach this on. And so this thing slides in this way, right? Yeah. All right, so we slide it on here. We use one screw from this side to hold it in place. Very good. And it had on the printed part a little sort of bump that goes into this other hole to also lock that in place as well. And then we take this end of the cable chain and we put it this way and attach it with 2 of these screws. Very good. All right. So now our electronics connections go facing downward, it says, so that they'll be visible from the underside. And there are 2 holes here in the metal piece that we can screw through to attach those. Wow, this screw wants to escape. All of these screws are a little bit small, but I'm probably making this look more difficult than it should be this morning. My fingers don't seem to be wanting to hold on to things, so all of the dropping of screws or having trouble lining things up is entirely my fault and not probably indicative of how difficult this is. All right, that's looking good. And we've got this piece here, which I think is just a channel to run some cabling through later on. And it fits this way, and there are these nice little indentations in it that slide down over the top of the metal parts. So this should just kind of slide into place. Yeah, and that's actually in there very solid, but they want us to put one screw in as well to hold it in place. And then, what, one last piece? Yeah, so this front piece with our LED slides in like so. And then we attach it with our final two M3x6 screws. There is a cable, of course, that attaches here into the to connect the LED, and we will be. I've put that off to the side. We'll be using that later on when we do the electronics wiring. When we do the electronics wiring for the bed, we'll go ahead and put that cable in place then. I told you that my fingers weren't working this morning. It's kind of early in the morning when I'm recording this one today. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm going to try to do a little part of this build every day and go ahead and release the videos right away. And so when during the day I do that is going to depend entirely on the rest of my schedule for the day and when I can fit this in. So it's kind of early in the morning, my fingers haven't warmed up, and I'm dropping everything. That time the hex driver went onto the floor. But here is our completed bed, or bed frame, I guess. And we're going to go ahead and attach it onto the printer. So let's back up here so you can see everything. And the way this is going to work, simple enough. These are kind of in the way. That's interesting. I almost want to remove this piece and put it back on later. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But this sits on here, and there are 8 holes, 4 on each side, that line up with the holes in these carriages on the rails. And we've got these tiny screws to use to attach those. And they say in the instructions to put a tiny bit of Loctite or thread locker of some kind on the end of each of these screws to hold them in place. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit here in one of my metal paint palettes. And that way we should be able to dip each screw in before we use it, and that'll be a little bit easier to keep the stuff from going everywhere. So it does look like, just checking, that this lines up pretty well, which means we've got the spacing between our 2 rails right when we did the measurements on the previous part of the build. I think that's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and with this driver here, and a little dab of thread locker on each screw, we will get these in place. And the trick here, right, is going to be making sure that I get these in straight. I don't want to thread them in at any kind of angle. And that's a little tricky because there's not a lot of vertical space above these things to work with. I'm not tightening these down all the way yet. You can see here I've got even some wobble. That's fine. I'll be able to tighten them all down once I get all 8 of them in place. I think these 4 that are sort of the bottom 4 here are going to be pretty easy to do and get them to go in straight, but I'm a little concerned about the 4 that are up at the top of these carriages because there's just less room to manipulate the screwdriver. I spilled a little bit of the thread locker there, so I'm just going to wipe that up with my finger. I'm going to turn this around in the hopes that I have a better angle to get at these ones that are at the top here. Yeah, so when it's in a very tight spot like these, it's actually looking like it's easier to start the threading with my finger. So get the screw placed in the right spot and then just start it threading in with my finger. And then I can reach in with the driver and tighten it up from there. But yeah, this electronics board mounting plate thing is going to definitely be in the way over here. So I am going to remove it just temporarily, and then I'll put it back when we're done here. Yeah, if I was writing these instructions, I may have changed the order of things and had you put a few of these plastic printed parts on after putting the bed on the printer. Just because now it's going to be a whole lot easier for us to access these screws here. All right, one more and then we'll tighten everything down. This is one of the tricky ones that's in the corner and probably easier to start with my finger. All right, this one here in the bottom corner didn't ever really line up correctly, so I'm coming back to that one to see if I can get it solved. There we are. All right, and now going back around and tightening up all of these things. And they say in the instructions to make sure you've got this nice and tight, right? Because you definitely don't want it shaking around or vibrating or coming loose as the bed is moving up and down. Very good. All right. And now, going back real quickly to the, if I can find it, here we go. So the Voron manual, if we go back there, this is the page where you would have put the bed that's made out of the bed holder that's made out of extrusions on, and we've built this instead. So joining back up here, what they want you to do is to re-loosen the screws at the tops and bottoms of these extrusions and play with the motion here to make sure that it is perfectly parallel and that it's not binding up anywhere. Right, so the idea here is loosen this one and this one and this one just ever so slightly, and then we can slide that like that, make sure it's good and loose. Free movement is what we're after, right? We can tighten this one down. Yeah, that seems really good and smooth. So then we'll tighten this one down. And then this one. Yeah, that seems real good. At this point, I can probably also remove this little plastic stopper that I have on the bottom of just this one rail. I hadn't taken that off yet because I didn't want the carriage to slide off the bottom here where we don't have a stopper, but at this point, since it's all attached across to the other side, it's not going to slide beyond that anyway. So now we can check the range of motion to make sure it's good all the way from the top to the bottom. And that's looking really good. So I am happy with that. Yeah, and just gravity is pulling that down nicely as well. Like if I leave it sitting there, it'll just slide back down, just from its own weight. All right, we did take this off, so I'm going to put this back on now before I forget. Right, there we go. So yeah, everything's set up. We will connect up the wiring for the LED and also for the bed thermistor and heater in a later step. For now, I think this is where we can now rejoin with the official Voron instructions, which is going to have us put the Z end stop on and then build up the rest of the frame. So we're going to do that. We're going to wrap this episode today, and then we'll do that in tomorrow's episode. So tomorrow we'll finish up the rest of the frame, at least the main front part of the frame, maybe not the back electronics compartment yet. So we'll do that. I'm not sure if we get to put the Z-axis drive screw in place yet or not. I haven't looked ahead in the instructions yet enough to see where we're going to stop tomorrow. But yeah, definitely we will build out most of the rest of the frame tomorrow. And yeah, that's going to do it for today. So this is our bed holder. It seems good. It's moving well, which I'm happy with. No issues with the motion up and down there at all. And everything's ready to put our bed on there and wire everything up once we get to that part of the build. So yeah, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions or comments as we're going along, definitely leave them down below and I will address them. If you get them in right away, I'll address them before in the next video. Yeah, hope you enjoyed this one. It was fairly simple, straightforward. This having this pre-made metal frame for the bed it saved a lot of time, I think, as compared to building the thing out of extrusions that we were going to normally have to do. Should be as well stiffer and hold the bed more level. So I think it's a good improvement for sure, having not built the other version. But so it's hard to judge for sure, but I'm happy with how this has come out, and I think that it's going to be a nice, solid, stiff, good, flat surface to put our print bed onto. So that's good. I will see you in the next one tomorrow, hopefully, where we build out the rest of the frame. Until then, have a good one. I'll see you later.